go? Great. We'll start our panel off today with, I think, is a core part of the business that everybody runs here every day, and I think it's on trust. Trust between airplane operators, trust between brokers, and because we're doing this every day, I think we'll start off with, what do you think is the one thing, and I'll start with you, Algie. What's the one thing that breaks trust between an airplane broker and operator?
I mean, it's super simple, right? I mean, I think when I'll bring it back to LUMINAIR because that's obviously the only thing I really know. I think when we looked at a lot of things, is there were companies in this industry that were kind of, you could tell that they were doing what they were doing for that company. They were doing business for them and them only. And I think when we started LUMINAIR, what we wanted to do was, it's super tacky, but we have this with slogan, which is the way you want. And the reason we say that is because actually we wanted to do business for our customers. And that a big part of that is definitely just being super open about what you can provide. I mean, it's not any kind of groundbreaking thing, but it's incredible how much people value, whether it's a broker or a retail client. We don't really have many retail clients, but it's incredible how much they value just the idea of a pretty easygoing, open conversation about what you can deliver. I think not promising the world, not trying to say we can deliver everything, and then ultimately you get pushed around a million different client service people. I think having a very direct line of communication, having your operations sitting beside your sales team, I think those are the things that really build trust. And for me, that was what was really important when we started LUMINAIR, was just that kind of honesty.
Jacquie, from your perspective, as you're working with operators, maybe break us through what are some things that might break that trust, and then on the other side, what are some things that strengthen that trust between a broker and an operator?
I think one of the biggest issues that we're dealing with in the industry overall is a very blurred line between broker and operator. They used to be distinctly different. And it's a very ego-driven, very competitive, intense space that we're in. And so sometimes the competition gets a little out of line. Both sides, I believe, are extremely valuable, and I believe the best model is the broker-operator differentiation and collaboration built on trust. And I think as I've been in the industry now for 20 years. I come from the operations side. I was the chief operating officer of a 10+ worldwide certificate. I did that before I went into the broker space. I continue to believe that you should have operational experience before you become a broker. There's a real problem with having brokers who don't have operations experience. So reasonably, operators don't necessarily trust brokers because there are plenty of them out there that don't know what they're doing, and they think marketing and brand and swag is the way to go about it. I think operators need to respect good quality brokers that are knowledgeable, that support their business, and recognize that brokers are their client, not the end user. That's a big problem. Mm-hmm. And on the other side, I think that brokers need to recognize that they are as much in service to the operator community as they are to their own client. We are extremely at Sparrow focused on bringing good quality business, vetting our clients. We run a 100% conversion rate from quote to booking because we understand that the operator time is valuable. The culture, your workforce, your maintenance, your crewing are major issues right now. So I think it's mutual respect and acknowledgement versus everybody trying to do everybody else's job. Brokers want to be operators, operators want to be brokers. So I think differentiation is probably a good strategy to get back to overall.
Well, I'll pass that to Lewis, who runs a broker and an operator. Lewis, where do you think, with your business model, how did you develop, hey, we're an operator, but we also need that retail customer base, and how do you balance that with your wholesale customers?
Yeah, it goes back to what you were saying at first. It's trust, and everyone can say that, right? That means doing the right thing, doing the hard thing. Let me give you an example. If we're dealing with a broker that's just given us a really great trip, this monster trip, end of the month, it's going to make your month on that tail. Well, you might have a mechanical, and you're finding out the night before. You're like, do I tell the broker? Do I not? If I spook the broker and they want to cancel, I just lost, my nut for the month. Actually doing the hard thing and telling the broker has gone a long way. That's actually our mindset on the operator side, and we always said, let's just respect them. I know it's probably going to cost us money, 9 times out of 10, but it's the right thing to do. Since day one, we kept them separate, kind of how Jacquie had alluded to. We knew that it would never work if we had an operator that tried to obtain retail business. We needed a really successful brokerage and a really successful operator, and for both of them to stand alone successfully.
Andy, building on what Lewis talked about, I think we've all been in situations from an operator standpoint that, we have a trip in 2 days, right? And our airplane's currently in maintenance. We think that airplane's gonna get out. But if we tell the broker now, that broker is maybe going to pull the airplane or pull the flight. So some operators may wait. I don't want to tell this broker now, I think it's gonna get fixed, right? Where is that line of communication on the brokerage side? What do you want to hear from airplane operators when there is a potential issue, but they may get it fixed? Like, how do you want to hear that communication, and what do you think it's fair from the operator standpoint that, hey, like, we're working through this issue, we're communicating, but don't pull this flight on us because this is a big trip, or we need this revenue for this airplane owner. Like, how do you think operators and brokers should approach those situations?
So when we talk about that kind of trust, to me it comes down to honesty and communication. The way we work, we're global. Every culture works differently. Customers in different countries scream at you in a different way. Operators behave differently. We can sit and we see it. We see competitors shouting at an operator going, your problem, you sort it, right? That's not gonna help anybody. A problem shared is a problem halved. We would rather talk about it, don't ghost the broker, because all that does is puts a little bit of doubt for the next trip. We're talking about long-term relationships. That's what, you can't sell a trip to a customer if you can't buy an aircraft. So that relationship for us is so key. Let's talk about it. We'll put our heads together. We don't know the ins and outs of those operation elements, and I think Jacquie's point of having some experience from the operator side, it does definitely help. But being able to then work it together and say, what's our backup? Like, if this does happen, what are we going to do together? Because we want the relationship, ultimately, we're all here for the end user to come back for another trip and have a good experience. And that's what we have to work very closely. And that's why our relationships are so key.
Do you mind if I piggyback off that? I actually think we probably won more business by telling brokers that our aircraft might be tech in the long run than we would have done by losing that one trip. I think literally with Andy's team, if we called them up 2 days before and said, hey, this is the situation, but we've had a look at the market and we've kind of got a backup option with a client, with a company we work with a lot, or you guys work with. Honestly, those brokers come back, and that is business that's sticky. That's not that you might lose 100 grand, you might lose 200 grand, but you might win $1 million worth of business off the back of that. And I think that's absolutely why we would always make that call. And we wouldn't beg them to keep the trip, because we know that no broker likes to be there sweating 48 hours before a trip being like, oh my God, is this aircraft going to get out of maintenance? The words you don't want to hear is, we're waiting on a part, right? I would tell that to a broker every day, and they would know exactly what that means. That's why we deal with people like Andy, all these guys, and we would win the business in the long run, I think, from that conversation.
But doesn't that show European operators are just so much nicer than U.S. operators?
You guys are cute. You guys are adorable. I thought we were supposed to be fighting here.
Well, where does that responsibility really lie when you are 2 days out of a trip and you have a maintenance issue? Is it the operator's responsibility to try and help and find a replacement? I've found that probably over the last 5 or so years, we're seeing more and more of the, hey, we're broken, I'm sorry, good luck. Where I feel like maybe 5 years ago, we would work together. And I see that as we become more transactional as an industry, those are starting to, that relationship started to fade. Is that because we've become more transactional? And Jacquie, I'll throw this to you. Have we become too transactional and less relationship based? And do we need to try and build those relationships back to work together as a team?
Well, I can say I'm a small business, which the majority of us are. The larger majority of our industry are the small businesses, but most of the attention goes to that 8% of the big brand companies that do things very differently than we do. So it's important for us to keep our eye on the ball, and the most important ball for us is our relationships, and those are our relationships with our clients and relationships with each other, our peers, the people that we're doing the day-to-day work, and that's whether or not it's broker to operator or internally between sales and operations. Those are just extremely key and way too overlooked. The gap has gotten way too big, and I think getting back to those basics and really paying attention to the day-to-day of what we do for a living is important. I'm not sure if I answered the overall question. Can you repeat
Andy,
it really quickly?
do you have a thought on that too? You did,
Yeah,
though, I think.
I mean, that relationship side is key, but if we don't feel that you're helping, whether it's being honest and saying, here's what the situation is, as a broker, we're probably better placed to find an aircraft. Do you want to go and start calling your competitors to put money in their pocket? You know, of course you don't. You want to try and cover it. But with that long-term goal, we remember what happens. We have long memories. I remember, like a number of years back, you have a couple of situations where you get let down. We will put an operator on block. I put VistaJet and Lux Aviation on block at the same time. And I really shut myself thinking, that's half the market we've just taken out.
Well, don't you think that only hurts your customers? You know, I hear a lot about people, oh, they're on our blacklist, and it's like this ever-growing blacklist everybody has. But in the end, aren't you hurting just your customers and giving them less options to select from?
What some of the time it's down to is issues with contracting, or there's something we need to iron out. We always go back. You know, we're a very good relationship with the likes of VistaJet and the big companies, because we want to iron things out. It may be something temporary. It sends a message also to a big airline who the Americans like to say, screw you, sort it out yourself. We'll just refund your money.
Yeah.
It's not a solution. But if it's something to say, yes, we need you, but you need us as well.
Yeah.
So there's give and take, but we're there to work it out. We want to get a resolution. Sometimes at a senior level, you have to shout louder to be heard. But we're always looking at what's best for the customer.
I
Like
think
ultimately.
if I could just, I totally agree with you. A broker is going to be better at sourcing the market for a recovery. And just coming back to the original question, Dan, which was really important when it comes to AOGs and recoveries, it's important to keep in mind that the operator's core focus is safety and operations, crewing and maintenance, parts and service. And so when an AOG occurs, as a broker, you need to understand that is where the operator's focus should be. And if their culture is different and they are more interested in off-fleet sourcing and being a broker, you're going to see it in their operation. So I think that that's important to keep in mind in terms of, are we too transactional overall? You can tell which operators are. And that comes back around to a lot.
It's the bottom line, isn't it? How's
I'm
your management structured? What do they want? Revenue, margin out of that, whether it's on the broker side or the operator side.
I might jump in a bit on Lewis's point that European operators are nice. I don't think that's true, but one of the weird things is some of my best clients are operators. I'm not sure. I think in the States it's less of a thing, but in Europe we tend to work together quite a lot. It's not as in like we're not a cartel or anything, not yet anyway. But we do tend to work very closely with our operators. Like, Vista are a huge client of ours. AirX book flights with us. We'll book a flight with AirX. It seems counterintuitive. You're right. They're our biggest competitors in a way, but in the end, we're all operating aircraft, and the regulatory landscape in Europe is such that we kind of do need to work together. And so that's why I think when we have an AOG situation, kind of going a little bit against Jack's point, we definitely will reach out to an operator who we work with closely. They might have booked a trip with us last week, and we'll return the favor this week. And that's not something we have any fear of. They'll give us credit. We trust each other. There's kind of an unwritten rule in Europe. Hey, you guys are all struggling with the same shit that we are. Let's work together.
That's definitely European.
Yeah. Well, what I've seen in the U.S. is the majority of operators are 10 airplane or less, and they're mostly in small local markets. And as they're competing in these local markets, they may lose an airplane under management to another operator. Well, now that operator's on the blacklist, right? They stole our G4, right? And then that creates friction between the two companies, and the collaboration isn't always there. Jacquie, you made a point about, you know, a new brokers that come in, and this kind of relates to a question. And Louis, I'll toss it to you. As more and more, as it's easy to create a broker, although not very easy to get an Avinode account anymore, which I think is a good thing. I think Avinode does set a correct bar from a cost standpoint and a business operations standpoint to filter out some of those, you know, call it basement brokers. But as more and more
Travel agents. We call them travel agents.
Travel agents, yeah. But Louis, as your wholesale team sees all these new names, how do you vet that? Hey, do we trust these people, these clients, these customers, this new broker, to be someone we want to do business with?
Yeah, and I think that's important because we do value our relationships. You know, if we do go tech, we'll offer to help. You know, we're not going to put that burden entirely on ourselves because we know the broker probably can do better. So as they come in, we make an effort. You know, we're not just going to blacklist anyone or say, hey, they're not good enough to you know, your money's good here, I promise you. But really, it's just about trusting the people in the space. You know, 9 times out of 10, 99 out of 100 times, we're going to know someone who knows somebody. And we'll say, hey, who's this? Where'd they come from? What are they doing? And this industry is so fluid. I mean, there are so many brokers that pop up, but they were just somewhere else. You know, they were already transacting. They were doing plenty of business. So no, it's really depending on the relationships in the industry. And same thing, going back to your earlier question, you know, on the flip side, if a broker burns us as an operator, you know, but they do a lot of business, but they burned us on one trip, or we had a really bad experience, they refused to pay for some extra Wi-Fi bill or some cleaning fee, do we blacklist them because our constituents and our aircraft owners? And then we said, all right, well, yes, Mr. Aircraft Owner, that broker was giving your tail a ton of business, but because of that one trip on another tail, now we're not accepting the business anymore. Should operators do that? Do we have some sort of responsibility to not do that for our aircraft owners? I don't know, but it always felt short-sighted, you know, except, you know, certain companies that are just notorious for stealing from operators, not paying, that sort of thing.
Who are those people?
Charter Flight Group, Jordan Brown.
We're all thinking the same thing.
Yeah, like that. It's silly not to name names.
But
Like,
that
it's
comes
fine.
back
That's what we're
around.
here for. Yeah.
There is an obligation.
Yeah.
I think there is an obligation. Everybody knows.
Yeah.
If you know, you know.
But,
you know?
those guys
So-
get filtered out so quickly. I mean, this industry.
Do they?
Yeah, I mean, they do.
So we have some notorious parties on the state side, at least, that don't. They've been around forever.
That seems like a you problem.
Yeah, sorry, Euro.
Damn Americans.
But it is, and I think there is some responsibility now for operators to step up and say, hey, we should be naming names. We should not be afraid to just call people out. You know, just understand the rules of libel and slander. But outside of that, name names. It's time. You know, there's no reason to beg for business.
Could you guys share an Excel list with me later on? That would be
I got
ideal.
you.
Thank you so much.
There's a good question. There's a couple great ones, but this one is, what's the biggest misconception operators and brokers still have about each other, and what do we think needs to change for the industry to work better? And I'll take this as someone that's been both on the operator and broker side. On the broker side, you know, there's some operators that we're afraid to place customers with because we think that operator will steal the customer. I don't know how true that really is. And I can tell you, when I was at Clay Lacy, we weren't sophisticated enough to know, to look at trip sheets and see who this customer was and steal them or put them in the CRM. Maybe we stumbled across a couple that were on one of our flights and then called us direct. So I see that as a misconception. I mean, that was always my thought with XO, that, hey, XO is going to steal your customer, and I was always afraid. What do you think is a big misconception on the operator side about brokers? And maybe Algie, you being from the operator, is there any big misconceptions that you've learned that really aren't true?
Yeah, I think the biggest thing you hear from operators, like all the time, in Europe, I'm not sure it's the same in the States, is like the brokers are uneducated, or that they are just kind of like lashing out in the dark for looking for cheap pricing, and that's basically it. I think education, I think training has really improved since I've been in the industry. I mean, I've been here for like 15, 17 years or something. But genuinely, I think bigger brokerages as well have excellent training programs. I think they are really keen about sharing about sharing kind of experience, going from higher levels down to lower levels. And I also don't mind it when kids are asking questions that sound stupid. There cannot be dumb questions in this industry, right? I mean, how else are you going to learn? And I think probably, I would say from my perspective, is the biggest misconception is definitely that brokers are dumb. They're just like pushing you on price. No, they're trying to learn just like everyone is. And I think we need to take more time. Yeah, sure, it could be annoying. It could take a bit more of your time, but how else is this like 19, 20-year-old person going to turn into your best client in like 5-10 years' time?
Is it the operator's job to educate those brokers?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I'm the CEO of the company, right? But I will take 20 minutes on the phone to speak to one of Andy's newest recruits to talk them through how slots work in Naples in the middle of summer. I really don't mind, because that will pay back. I swear to God, that will pay back. It will have an effect. That broker will book us in 5 years' time and say, yeah, they took the time to explain something to me. That's service that we will go back to.
IATA, the International Aircraft Dealers Association, has a training program. They have a registration that you have to go through. Do you think there's a need for that on the charter broker side, that there should be some kind of association that people have to go through? Jacquie, what do you think about that? Or Andy, you're ready to go. Go for it.
I think it would be great. I think it would be very difficult to create a level playing field. We spend a fortune on training. We bring all our trainees to London from around the world. They spend a month in London training, classroom training. They're being mentored. We don't really get a return on a new broker for 3 years. That's how long it's going to take to earn back the investment. And any of those people leave, end up probably staying in the industry. They're well educated, and quite a few people here have probably scooped up ex-ACS brokers in their teams. But that's great when we have the funding, we have the scale to do that. There are boutique brokers, there are little, one-man bands who are very good. And there's been talk about putting in bonds to make sure people are financially stable, etc. I don't know who polices it. It's hard enough policing Part 91 flights, which is so illegal, and we can't manage to really control that. So it would be nice to have guidelines, but I think practically it's difficult to put a company with 3 employees who don't have that kind of financial infrastructure on a same playing field of the likes of the big airlines, the big brokers. And I think that education point is key. We make a point of ensuring our brokers behave well. I think we have a reasonably good reputation in the industry. We pay, we sign contracts, we act professionally. The other danger is you rely on an operator who's giving you a quote and a price, and you are hoping that the person who gave you a quote didn't start 2 weeks ago and has no real idea what they're doing. Did they check whether you can get into that airport on a wet runway, or the departure times, slot restrictions? So I think there's an education piece on kind of both sides, where the operator does their bit and the broker does their bit.
When Sergey was on here a little bit earlier, he talked about the growth in the fractional business. And I think what they've done a great job with is making transacting and flying easy and frictionless. On our charter side, it seems to be a problem for a friction standpoint. And the question from Oliver King is, who do you think creates the most friction in private aviation today? Is it the brokers? Is it the operators? Is it the tech platforms that are sitting in the middle? Lewis, what do you think? Where's the most friction being created right now?
I think, and I was speaking about this a couple weeks ago in Scottsdale, I think we've all seen this big influx of, third-party support companies. So, whether you have your Goodwins who are there acting on behalf of brokers, if you have broker alliances that some operators are trying to push out, or just the franchise model that is starting to become a little more popular, I guess. These are new. We don't know how to deal with them. Operators, at least stateside, we don't know how to deal with them. I don't know if you have this problem overseas, but we don't know who we're dealing with or how to deal with them, because as long as I remember, the relationship between brokers and operators is purely relational. It's who do you know? How well do you know them? Are you going to take care of this person or not? If you're just getting faceless requests from someone, and occasionally the same request for the same trip from two different people behind the scenes, you don't know who you're dealing with, what to do. I think for us that's kind of raised the biggest question mark, and it's early, so it could work out great. But I think in theory, if there's widespread adoption of them, how are operators supposed to act? Just purely relational, or start shifting to just purely transactional? We're just robots working with other robots. We then become AI. Wow, that's a dark picture of humanity. But that's probably my answer, is that third party.
Algie, as tech grows and grows in this space, and from both the operator and broker side, we're starting to see more and more things like dynamic pricing, automated pricing. Where do you think tech will help create less friction? What are your thoughts on, dynamic automated pricing?
It would be amazing if it worked.
Why doesn't it work?
It can work. It definitely can. I think, but I don't know. I mean, I don't want to be super negative on it. I would really like it to work. I'd like to see it work. I think we deal with more variables on a single quotation than I think the most other industries deal with on their entire kind of in a week or a month, whatever. The number of variables, especially in Europe, obviously operations over here are a little bit more predictable. I guess you don't really have the slot situation that we do. You tend to have airports that stay open at night and stuff. I think that's possibly where dynamic pricing is tricky. On the other side, there's an education piece, right? It's ultimately a broker's responsibility to make the right request. If everyone was doing everything perfectly, dynamic pricing could certainly work. But that's the problem. Since when does everyone do everything perfectly? That doesn't happen. So I think there's going to be a situation where it definitely can be sent out. We know that dynamic pricing and automated pricing can be sent out, but I think it's always going to have to be checked by someone. We're so far away from just instantaneous AI everything, going straight through dark vision of the future. And Sergey was also saying he doesn't see technology as a replacement for people, but a kind of way of reducing that friction. And that's how I see it kind of being. When we made the switch, I used to work with Foss at Air Hamburg, and we use Flex now at LUMINAIR, and it's like the curtains open, the sunshine comes in through the window. It's a beautiful day. It's so easy. And I think those kind of supplementary supporting systems are only going to improve our life and make us more productive as people. And I think for me, that's the most important part of the technology and the reduction of friction.
Jacquie, where do you think technology does more harm than good in our business?
I think on the sales side of the equation, we're very confused about where technology in our industry is most valuable, and that is on the aircraft and on the airfields. And we have to keep in mind that there's a lot of financial investment behind trying to convince us that there's some sort of magic solution to what we do. And aviation is not like any other business that exists. And you see people coming in from other industries that think that they can plug in and apply and make things happen in our space that just aren't realistic. And it's all nice to think about. And I think there's been a tremendous amount of downward pressure from well-funded big entities that, as smaller to mid-sized businesses, which is the nature of this industry, it is not going to change. We are regulated that way. It's not a bad thing to be an operator with 8 airplanes and running a good, safe, sound, solid culture business. That's a good thing. That's what the majority of the industry is. As there's downward pressure with these technologies and these slick, sexy solutions and these brands. And I remember when branded water in the cabin was like this really big fancy thing. Get branded water off your cabins, put Fiji in there, that's what your clients want. Don't give in to the downward pressure. It's a money game at a high, high level. Run a good aviation company. Whether you're a broker or an operator, be an aviator. I think that's the most important thing.
Yeah, sick, absolutely.
Another interesting question here is how do you make a broker your favorite customer? And maybe Lewis, I'll toss this to you. And what are your favorite brokers? What do they do? What makes them so great to work with?
It's usually the ones that understand. I enjoy Hermes, Louis Vuitton, anything of that nature is right up top. No, honestly, it is that mutual. I hate saying it because it's a nothing term. It's communication, but it's knowing that, all right, if we're going to be honest with you and tell you a day, 2 days out that we might go tech, I want to see, are you telling your client that? Like if I turn it on a broker and say, hey, you just lucked out in this crazy, it's a 100K trip all day, you just backed into some amazing option, you're buying it for 50, you're selling it for 90, everybody wins, and same thing. Are you gonna tell your client that there might be an issue and he might just use his buddy's plane, he might, fall back into his Vista program, or do you wait to the last minute and hope everything comes together? I think there's a feel for that. You can tell what brokers are on your team, are communicating, the way you are with them, they are with their clients. That makes us, feel real warm and fuzzy. And same thing, if we're gonna do right by you, and let's say we have some issue, we can't come to terms on, hey, one of your passengers broke a table. What do we do? It's 10K. I want to know that. Are you actually eating some of that? Are you taking that on if you can't get it from your client? If so, hey, guess what? We'll help you with that. We'll go. Let's go halvesies on it and live to fight another day.
Andy, on the other side, what makes some of your operators your favorite operators? What do they do?
We don't have favorite operators.
Everyone's a favorite, right?
That's not what you told me last night.
I think it's that consistency. It's you've got my back, we've got your back, and the biggest challenge for a customer is likely a substantial delay or an AOG. How is it handled? How is it communicated? There's enough times where it's a weekend, the trainee at the airline's on call trying to deal with it. They don't know what's happening. It's stressful. You've got a customer screaming at you, you're chasing for updates, and you get ghosted. And it may be the operator's trying to sort something out in the background. And it was on, I think, one of David's slides earlier. The longer that silence, the more the panic. And I've had this where I love my brokers, but occasionally they just hand my cell number to a customer and go, you deal with this.
Yeah.
And we had a customer sitting up in the Arctic Norway, just on a trip to see Santa. He's got his kids and a couple of friends with them, and we had a mechanical, then the weather was bad. He's stuck there, and all he's doing is letting his blood boil. I need to speak to someone now. He's gone on the website, he's looked up the chairman, so I get that phone call. You've got to let that customer get it out their system, but you've got to look to help. Then you've got to understand where they're coming from. So this guy's then got the other parents going, you douchebag, you took my kids away, now they've got to get back for a funeral, they're stuck up in somewhere. So that customer's got a lot of pressure on them. You've got to kind of work out, how do we solve that together? What can we do with the operator? There's times when there's nothing you can do. I mean, even the icing trucks froze. It was horrible. But it's coming through that. Ultimately, we want that customer to come back and understand we did everything we could for them. And doing that with an operator who says, I'm in this with you. I'm not going to just turn my laptop off, and it's your problem. We'll touch base on Monday. That's where next time this comes up, that's the worst case scenario. We've been through it. You were there. And sometimes you don't know that until it happens. And that's when you see the true colors of some operators who have sold you the trip and aren't too fussed about the follow-up. And equally, I think particularly we see it in America. We're a big brokerage, but we're not the size and scale of anything in America. And there's times when an operator just says, screw them, doesn't matter. They'll come back. I've heard that conversation. They'll come back because they'll need our plane sitting in Dominican Republic or whatever. They'll come back. And that's, you look at that and say, is that really how we want to have a relationship? And then you make decisions based off that.
Based on that, kind of building on that they'll come back. And this is kind of, I'll pose this to you, Jacquie. When you have 3 solutions for a customer, you've got maybe a good relationship with 1 or 2, how are you presenting that to your customers about, all right, here are the 3 solutions that I have, but I know, we've had issues with this one, or their communication's not there. They may be the best price, but I just don't like dealing with their team. Is that something you just even if they're a great solution, you just don't present? Or are you presenting to your customer with these caveats? Hey, they are the best price, but their communication is going to be difficult and their on-time ratio may not be great. Like, how do you approach those things?
So we do have a DNF, a do not fly list, in our fly safe system, based on operator behavior. And, you know, like I said, I have operations experience. I think as a broker, operators, you deal with all of them. So, and operators work more in a silo. So sometimes they don't realize how obvious what they're doing is. They think they've invented something new, or they have some, and they just don't. And, you know, so there's a lot of different things that you can pick up on and catch them in. And when it does, you know, you mitigate up against that, but when it ultimately catches up with you, then it's, you know, it's done. Or if you see it, you cut them off sooner. As far as representing options to clients, you know, we run a portfolio of clients that ultimately trust our expertise. We're a one option, you know, we select the option, the client signs off on the option. We run everything behind it to make sure that we have, you know, we understand what the market is telling us, how that trip is going to run, where that trip is going to price, what kind of options are out there, and we start tracking 24 hours ahead, just, you know, watching the airplane fly, watching what the market's doing, so that if something comes up, we can run up behind it as best possible. But it comes back again to trust, and just, I think that the consumer, and again, no fault to the small to mid-sized businesses, I think the consumer in general has been very misled about what this industry actually can offer, does offer, what's available. I think a lot of data mining and data phishing that's been out there has put, again, downward pressure on aircraft management companies and operators. You just have to be knowledgeable about that and let your clients trust you by building trust and be the expert. You know, somebody knows the term empty leg, they're not that sophisticated, even though they think they are. So I think that's important.
There's a question here about pricing transparency. And I feel like maybe 8 years ago, or maybe a little bit earlier, we used to line item every single price in our charter quotes. Now, pretty much that doesn't happen at all. It's usually just one line. Do you think there needs to be more pricing transparency between operators and brokers, or should they still stay kind of one line item? And Louis, I'll toss it to you.
Yeah, I'll say it's almost impossible to go back to that. And I remember the days you're talking about, you know, my early days at Jet Select and then Starbase. We certainly did that. I think the market's become too complex. People have evolved. There's so many different types of operators. Your own fleet, floating fleets, your managed floating fleets, semi-floating fleets, your old school based guys like us. Even the old school based managed operators like us, we get, you know, we have a little leeway now. We know how to do a few more things. So we might be piecing trips together and taking a certain level of risk or exposure to make things happen, where it's never going to be as easy as just here's the hours times a rate and a couple landing fees. I think we're past that now.
We're seeing more and more third-party pieces of technology between the broker and the operator. Do you think that is going to help the, you know, broker and operators transact easier, or do you think that's going to degrade our relationship between the two and ultimately hurt the client? I'll toss it to you, Andy.
We're old school. We pick the phone up. There's an element of tech that works. That, you know, there's conversations about the speed of response. You know, that's where you've got to be. You've got to be in there with 5 minutes. Someone else is going to pick that trip up. But I think the other thing you get is the complexities of slots, permits, weather, crew. It's difficult to guarantee I can put my money on this, it'll be fine. You know, there's too many variables. Is there that friction from time to time? Of course. It's that system. I mean, I was staying in a relatively poor quality hotel in Hollywood earlier this week. No reception. And they said, oh, by the way, the restaurant's permanently shut, the gym's permanently shut, the bar's permanently shut. So it's going to be a nice conversation with my PA when I get home. But, you know, looking at that I got given a text message with my room number, the code to get into my room. I didn't see any staff. And I think, is that convenient? It was kind of convenient, but actually, I wasn't reassured that everything's going to run smooth. You know, who do I go to when the laundry's not been collected, etc. And I think that tech works in the right size sections. For us, the back of house tech and AI is where I see the biggest benefit, not on the customer side. I think the customer side, we still have a lot to do to be able to go, let's ping that out, they'll be fine. You know, do we need to check it? It comes down to the relationship. That's what this business is. It's relationships with those customers.
As I've used more and more tech and built tech for smaller companies and operators, there's a big uplift in help, right? Automated quoting, check the schedule. But what I've found is all those side scenarios of, oh, this airplane's based in Orange County, so this flight ends at 11 p.m. I forgot, the tech didn't add in overnight because it can't get back, right? As all these things happen, as more people push into tech, and we're going to make these mistakes, you know, we'll kind of wrap this up here, but tech is coming, right? People are going to automate all the things that you say people need to do. Is it wet? Is it slots? Humans are making these decisions. The tech will eventually have all those things. They can make those decisions faster, more accurate, but they're going to make mistakes, and it's really going to happen over the next 2 years that these mistakes will constantly happen. How do we prepare ourselves as an industry to work through these mistakes as we're learning all these little side things that, hey, the tech didn't think about this, the tech didn't think about this. You know, as we all adopt these new pieces of technology, and it's imperfect right now, and it will be that way for the next, call it 2 years. How do we as an industry and as an operator and broker kind of take those issues on and kind of work through these things? And I'll toss it to you, Algie, and I'm curious on everyone's answer before the end here.
To be honest, Daniel, I think the one thing we do in aviation is deal with screw-ups. I think that's the biggest thing we do every day. I think we will just do it in exactly the same way we dealt with every other screw-up we've ever dealt with before. I don't see that as an issue at all. I think if that's the screw-up we're dealing with, happy days. Every day is just a series of screw-ups that we've got to deal with, and that'll be another one.
Yeah. Lewis, what about you? How do we deal with them?
No, that's 100% right. I think just looking outward, you're right. The tech is going to eventually get so good that it will recognize all these, you know, Orange County late night things, wet runways. I believe there's going to be an inflection point, and just like any other industry where tech really makes that final leap, someone's going to have to take, you know, the burden of it and say, all right, you want to get rid of half your dispatchers and your wholesale quoting team because of this tech? All right, great. If there is a mess up in the tech, are you going to step up and take on the financial burden of that mistake? If operators are willing to do that, then yeah, I think that's a good path forward. But if not, then don't talk about the tech replacing half your team, saving on overhead, because the mistakes are going to cost you one way or another.
Andy, what do you think?
I think it's sharing of information. Everybody's going to develop probably the same end game with a different process behind it. And I think, you know, having forums, having events like this where everybody from a slightly different background, a different territory, we can get together and kind of understand what we want to do, how it's going to work, and where the pinch points are, that we can all share that information rather than say, well, I've spent all the money on it, I'm not going to tell anybody my system's great. I think there is that sharing of information that may help. It's going to be difficult.
You're ready to share all your tech with everyone right now, right?
I don't know anything about tech themselves.
Jacquie, how do we get over this hump over the next 2 years of new systems being implemented and the issues that we're going to have?
My perspective is it's getting messier and messier and less reliable by the day. So I'm not buying into this whole revolution of
but
2 years.
it's that kind of S-curve, right? It's the S-curve that we're dealing with right now. We're on the downside of this S-curve, but it will theoretically pick back up.
Well, we'll talk about it when it picks up. Right now, I would say invest in good people in your company and be very careful about trying to replace them with tech. I mean, some of the biggest brand names right now that are out there that are using AI, the stuff that's coming through in your inbox and stuff that you're getting is not reliable. It's really messy. It's overwhelming. It's distracting. And I'm just very careful about it. I think there's a lot of, even just on flight times right now, you get, 10 different quotes and, flight time data isn't even reliable anymore. I mean, you really have to double check everything. And so until and we keep feeding it, if it's going to be built on human knowledge, and I hate to say it, we're some salty dogs up here. We used to have the charter guidebook. Most people don't even know what that is anymore. And it's very difficult to trust that knowledge that is going into the system is good knowledge. So who's the overbearer of that? Who decides that? I mean, I think overall, not even just technology in our space, but technology in general that's starting to educate and advise us in all areas of our lives is, how reliable is it really? I think we have to be careful. And I think at the end of the day, we have to remember that we have souls on board. We have crews in airplanes. We have people that we're putting up in the air. We're unlike any other industry out there. We are it. And I think that we should be more cautious than any other industry when it comes to trusting technology in our space.
Awesome. Well, thank you, everybody. Thank you for all the questions. Sorry we didn't get to everyone, but appreciate it. Great job, everybody. Thank you.
Thank you.